Hey, y'all. You've stumbled upon the Fishing Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Angie Thompson. Today's guest is one of the smartest and most creative people I know in the fishing industry. Now, I've known Chris Russell for a lot of years, and I've watched him take unique and dynamic approaches to many different projects. Currently, Chris is marketing manager at Plano Synergy, which is a company with several brands you'd recognize, including Plano and Fraybill. Plano, of course, is the iconic tackle box maker, and Fraybill is a fishing accessories brand that makes bait management equipment, nets, and ice fishing gear. Chris has also worked for such powerhouse brands as Shimano and Eagle Claw. So he's got marketing chops, deep experience, and like I said, a creative mind. The reason I'm so excited to have Chris on this week is because the first couple of times I ever had conversations with him, when he would start riffing on something he was working on or something he wanted to do, he'd get my attention real quick because he always seemed to be thinking differently than everybody else, always taking a different tactic. Now, that's something that will get my attention every time. And you know what? Different usually gets everybody's attention. Look, the annual fishing trade show, ICAST, usually has around 600 exhibitors. That's 600 companies that make fishing products, all trying to get a consumer's attention. That's a lot of fish pictures, y'all. Any marketer that can cut through the clutter of 600 brands shouting for your attention is someone we should listen to. And we're lucky enough to get to sit down with Chris today and talk with him about how he does it. So you and I may not be a brand on the level with Plano yet, but we can study what Chris does and how he does it to figure out how to grow and get better. So here we go, y'all. This should be good. Chris Russell, I am so glad to see you. I know I've told you this probably over and over and over again, but you're one of my very favorite, you're on the tippy top of my favorite person list in the fishing industry, actually anywhere. So I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you very much, Angie. You're high on my list as well. And I'm just glad we got the opportunity to get together. It's great.
Me too. So to jump right in, I've told so many people that I think you're one of the smartest marketers in the business, but you have kind of an interesting background. I'm always so interested and intrigued when people come from the West Coast and end up living on the East Coast. What was that path like? To explain, how did that happen?
You're right. I most certainly did not think marketing was going to be my career path, looking back to even high school days.
What did you think it was going to be?
No, I didn't. I love to fish. I grew up fishing. I grew up in a fishing family. The Pacific Northwest is where I kind of called home all through my high school days. And my family and I used to love to go out. Thanksgiving Day was kind of a special day. That meant steelhead fishing in the morning and turkey in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of one of our traditions. But my dad loved to fish. We had a small boat as far back as I can remember. So the passion of being around fishing and the outdoors, we would deer hunt, we would hike, we would camp. We just always were outside. So there was a lot of that that I just kind of grew up with. But Angie, originally I was an auto diesel mechanic. That's where I started, honestly.
I cannot believe that.
I went to school right out of high school, went to a tech school and got a certified auto diesel mechanic associate degree. And about halfway through, I realized I did not want to be dirty up to my elbows every day for the rest of my life, kind of thing. Yeah. It's a fun hobby, but I didn't want to do it for a living at that.
I'm blown away because you're so creative. I can't imagine you doing anything other than being in a creative field.
Well, we kind of, a couple of buddies of mine, we had hot rods in high school. We worked on cars. And so the creative juices kind of went that direction. I owned 66, 65 Mustangs. I owned a Chevelle, just had different hot rods that's where it all really started. But during that path, I was actually living in Phoenix, Arizona, going to school there, and found out that I needed to return home to my parents' house in Eugene, Oregon, just outside of Eugene. We had an illness in the family, and I was the youngest, and I just needed to go back. Moved back into my parents' house kind of unexpectedly, very short notice, and walked into a retailer that is in the Northwest called Bi-Mart. It's a chain of stores, and they carry kind of everything from fishing tackle to pharmacy supplies. and asked for a job, and they had an opening for an automotive clerk. And
oh my gosh.
they literally hired me like on the spot, like no interview. The guy said, "Can you start like day after tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, maybe 3 days from now." But and there I just kind of found a good home. I moved up to assistant manager and then store manager. I actually was a store manager of the first Weimart that faced a Walmart.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So there was none in Oregon at the time. And the store that I was a store manager of actually became the head buddy point of Walmart and Weimart out there.
How fun.
And then I moved into the buying office and bought fishing tackle, automotive supplies, a variety of other categories.
Now, how long was that before you got hired until you moved into sort of that role?
It was about 3 years before I became store manager, about a year there. And then I moved in the buying office and did that for about 7 years.
Gosh.
Yeah.
All right. And then what?
So the buying position, I was buying all fishing tackle for about 50 stores. And that led me to know a lot of people in the fishing industry. Right. I got to meet guys like Bill Dance on a fishing trip, some other iconic figures in the industry. Forrest Wood was someone I crossed paths with at ICAST back in the day. Some of these just real great figures that I always remember. But the short version is I did a lot of business with Eagle Claw fishing tackle. And at the time, I was doing a lot of packaging design work. I was working on some private label products for the company I worked for. And I was going back to school and learning more marketing, told a few white lies, and they believed enough to hire me the first time. And then that catapulted me into the true marketing director job at Eagle Claw back in 2001.
Oh my gosh. And that's actually, I met you when you were at Eagle Claw. It doesn't surprise me to hear you say that you did all those different things, because I think when you're smart, you can do a lot of different things, and you're clearly and obviously very smart. But do you consider yourself more of a creative? Do your talents lie with being creative, or do your talents lie with being a good business person?
It's funny. That's sounds like a job interview question, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
No. It's interesting. You just came across as like, wow, I haven't had a job interview in a while. I consider myself a strong creative thinker. I enjoy that side of it. I like having a little bit of that quiet time where you can just analyze problems and look for solutions. I think one of my strengths, though, honestly, is being able to just be a team builder and surround myself with smart people. No one marketer can figure it all out. There's so many angles and so much diversity in the people we're trying to speak to, from East Coast to West Coast, or fisheries, or, whatever it might be. And so I always have kind of said, the strength of my success has been around the smart people that I've been able to associate with, learn from, challenge me. People that I've hired were way smarter than me at times. Right. And that probably is it.
It sounds like you've made some really good career choices too. After Eagle Claw, you went to Shimano, right?
Correct. Yep.
Did
I had the opportunity
there?
to move and move to Southern California with Shimano, worked in their corporate offices there, Orange County, California. And then during that stint, they decided they were going to split their offices and have an East Coast and West Coast facilities, and asked if I'd be interested in Charleston, South Carolina. And Southern California just wasn't a great fit for my wife and I. We love the area, but just wasn't quite our cup of tea, a little too urban. We were living in a condo and cost of living was expensive. So we said, heck yeah, we'll go. I didn't even know Charleston was North Carolina or South Carolina hardly at the time.
And do you like it?
We do. Yeah, we love it here.
Seems like you do.
We found a great home. We've got a lot of good friends. We're close to the ocean. I've transitioned to where I fish in the saltwater about 80% of the time now for redfish and sea trout. We were out fishing for flounder late yesterday evening. And so I love the saltwater area. And, two things I feel like I've been really lucky with in my path, Angie. One, I've got to work for 3 of the best companies in their category.
Absolutely.
With Eagle Claw, then Shimano, then Plano, all kind of pillars within their category strengths. And the other side of it, I've got to live in some of the best places in our country.
Oh, that's true
a lot of people would die to live in Denver, or they'd love to live in the Northwest. Southern California is a mecca for a lot of people, and now Charleston. And so I've been very lucky in several parts of my career.
Just, you have a charmed life. I'm telling you, and it's well deserved. So talk a little bit about what you do now and sort of, what that really means. Cause we hear these titles sometimes, but I'm interested to know kind of what your day looks like.
Okay. Well, as many of us, my day doesn't look the same as it did maybe 5 months ago.
Right. But you're at Plano now.
I am. Yep. I am the marketing director for Plano Molding. And when I came on board, it was all fishing. I was marketing for the Plano brand and the Frayville brand.
Another iconic brand. Plano.
Yep, another one. Yep. Been around since the 30s. Frayville is actually the older of all the brands. And then recently I've evolved, and now I'm doing marketing for Plano Molding in its entirety. So that means hunting, storage, and fishing are the three big categories. We also have some household brands that we're working on in addition to Plano Fishing and Frayville Fishing. So
awesome.
I work from home.
What is your title?
Marketing director.
And so what does that, like I said, what does that mean?
Sure. It really means that if it's marketing for those brands, it kind of flows through me. Our team is actually very compact. There's not a lot of us. We do work with several outside agencies. So my management of people is really at the agency level, the ad agency, not direct support. I have one very talented in-house creative designer that I work with, and we work on the brands together. But I work with 4 different agencies at different times. Wow. Negotiate anything from print, TV, radio to sponsorship and pro staff. Work on the creative direction. I was involved deeply in the Edge launch. So I work with our product team and engineering team on coming up with captivating ideas around new product launches, colorways, ways to explain technologies, and just if it's marketing, it's me at my brand here.
And so you said you had 4 agencies, but do you manage like your pro staff? Does that all go through you and the people that you deal, like TV show? I know you do some TV shows and things like that. Is that all funneled through you, or does an agency do that for you?
No, currently it is all through me. I took on pro staff. I really love the pro staff side of things.
Right.
And one of the reasons I enjoy doing it, and I feel like it's important, a lot of marketing managers kind of push that off, or they outsource that. But that is how you know what's going on in the pulse of our industry. Those guys are in the field. They're fishing 340 days a year sometimes, all over the country. I've got pros in Canada. I've got pros in Key West. I've got pros that ice fish. I got pros that 100% saltwater walleye to the salmon guys to long range tuna guys. So I get to hear what's really happening, and you get to see trends a lot of times before the average person might even catch on to it.
Oh, that's cool. So real quickly though, what is the synergy of Plano Synergy? So the company is Plano Synergy, just for people out there that don't realize it's his brand. There's a Plano brand, but the company is called Plano Synergy. And what is the synergy?
Correct. Yeah, the synergy, that was the result of a merger several years ago. There was a number of hunt brands that were under a synergy type corporation. Then Plano owned Frayville. And they put those two together. So there's a dozen brands within our portfolio. 2 of them are designated really as fishing brands. The rest are in the hunt side. So we own anything from Barnett crossbows to wild game cameras, Ameristep blinds. There's a lot of crossover in technology. So, some of the things that we learn or that we get out of the Plano brand, we can apply that to a hunting category, or work we do on a Frayville ice shelter might help Ameristep hunting blind.
And that crossover is synergy.
That's the synergy. Yes.
I think I'm so funny. All right.
You are.
We're going to break for just a second, and we'll come back with Chris Russell from Plano Synergy. We'll be right back. I really want to hear from you to know what kind of questions you have and how I can serve you best in this podcast. The easiest place to reach me is probably at Facebook or Instagram, where you can find me as Fishing Business Podcast, or on YouTube, but you'll have to search for me there by typing in Fishing Business Podcast. Holla! Okay, we're back on the Fishing Business Podcast with Chris Russell from Plano Synergy, one of my favorite marketers in the industry. And Chris, I have to tell you, I've seen you do some really creative things. And I'm not saying, when I say creative, I don't mean like, oh, that ad was great or that tagline was great. I've just seen you think differently than other people. And, it seems to me like you are kind of an acolyte of the Jerry McInnes method of thinking, style of thinking. That is, if everybody's doing this, you do that. If everybody zigs, you zag. And it just seems like that's what you've done along the line somewhere. Just even, I remember, I think it was ICAST, you doing the poker tournament. I thought it was such a great thing to do at ICAST and so different from what everybody else was doing. How does that play into the way you approach marketing?
Well, one, that is a great compliment. If you compare me to somebody as successful as Jerry, that means a lot. I appreciate it. It most certainly is what I try to do. And in some cases I've had to find brands that allow me to go down that path.
Right.
One of the things, my stint at Shimano was fairly short, and I had people ask me, why would you ever leave such an iconic brand as that? And, they're very good at what they do, maybe the best at what they do, premium, top quality rods and reels. But their marketing isn't built to run that way. And so I had a great time and I learned a lot. They challenged me to be smarter and be better. In the long run, it wasn't a great fit for me because that's not how they want to do things. It's really kind of not in their culture. But I have most certainly done that. We launched Trocar hooks a number of years ago. And I guess that was one of the ones I kind of hang my hat on as a defining product launch. And, one of the things we did is we built an entire war room around what everyone else was doing in that space. We had every ad we could find. We had every image of a pro staff we could find that was sponsored by Mustad or Owner or Gamakatsu. And we said, whatever they're doing, we're not going to do any of that. It has to be completely off their pace. And one of the things that came up as no fish in any of the imagery. For 2 years. So everyone was holding a fish. That was the standard of a fish hook advertisement is we make sharp hooks and here's proof. And they would hold up a big bass or there'd be a big saltwater fish. So that's one of the things we said is no fish. And so we just kind of went around and if you take the fish out, then what do you have to do to make the ad exciting instead? And that's how we led down the path of what Trocar looked and stood for.
And it did. It was launched as a really powerful visual brand with a brand story around it that was instantly communicated in my mind. And what I thought it did really well was cut through the clutter, probably because it didn't you weren't showing fish. I talk a lot on this podcast and to anglers that I coach about what they're putting out in social media needs to be more than the grip and grin because you can't cut through the clutter. Right?
Yeah.
If you continue to do what everybody else is doing.
Sure.
But Trocar was a great example of that.
Thanks. Yeah.
And speaking of brand launches, an angler who's trying to get started as a professional angler is basically launching a new brand. And so you guys ought to really listen to what Chris just said right there, because you could take what he said and apply it to what you're trying to do to launch a brand. But what do you think? How would you recommend someone getting started to look at a brand like Plano? How would you recommend them to watch that and learn from it? How you market?
It's a challenge for many beginning anglers because they don't have maybe a lot of means. They're juggling a full-time career and a tournament trail. Traveling a lot, many of these guys are fairly young. Maybe they have a family, maybe they don't, so there's a lot on their plate. There was a seminar that I attended not too long ago. It was actually with the fishing industry and a lady named Sally Hogshead. I don't know if you.
I do. I've read her books.
And, she had a quote in there that said, different is better than better. And I have that in my office now because it is so true in so many ways. I don't think anglers can go and say, I'm the best angler at
Right.
the FLW level or the whatever level they're fishing. What you kayak, redfish, bass, no matter. No one can say they're the best over and over and over again. Even Jordan Lee, who's flying high right now, or Kevin Van Dam, there's peaks and valleys. And so what you can work to do is be different. And I think that goes back to your branding statement of how do I stand out?
Right.
What am I delivering that's different than other people? And I think it has to be past this idea of that I'm entitled to a sponsorship, because I don't think any angler is entitled to a sponsorship, even if they're the most loyal user of a brand. That's all they've ever used. That's all they'll ever use. It's the only truck they'll ever drive, maybe. Because we get pretty passionate about our vehicles sometimes, right? It's like, I'm a Ford guy or I'm a Dodge guy.
Yeah.
But you don't deserve sponsorship by that company. You're just a brand user. And so you've got to prove your value. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to make a couple bucks. We do this for fun, but we got to make money. We have budgets we have to adhere to. I have reports that I have to do to show that my money is being spent wisely. And so I think that's the one thing that be a bit different, approach it from your strength. Think about what your strength is. And, you may be funny. And Gerald Swindle has made a living being funny and a pro angler, right? And people love him for that. And so you find your strength, and then, use ways. Your social media is a great opportunity to kind of tell that story. And then I think sponsorship comes much easier than I just won this recent tournament approach.
You're singing my song. We're singing from the same hymnal. I love it. So to do that, I think guys have to apply a little bit of creativity to how they're portraying themselves, and think about it from a creative standpoint. Is creativity a skill that you can cultivate? Can you get better at being creative?
I think in today's society of YouTube and other accessible learning programs, you can. And you can catch up pretty quick. You don't have to be the best marketer in the world, and maybe that's not your cup of tea and you don't even want to do it, which is fine. Then that means I still keep a job. I don't need too many smart young people pushing me out too soon. But what you can do is there's videos online. I mean, if you just want to look at new ways to improve your following or your engagement or your live feeds on Instagram, there's 100 videos. I watched 2 this week. And so I still try to learn and try to gain knowledge of what the newest things are and how to be a little smarter along the way. So it doesn't come natural for some people, like it's left brain, right brain, and it's hard to pull that together. But you most certainly can learn the principles and then apply that type of thinking. But it takes sometimes just some quiet time to concentrate on it.
Yeah, I recommend using your windshield time to instead of, every tournament angler that I know, if they haven't done well in a tournament, when they drive home, all they're thinking about is, what if I had done A, B, and C instead of D, E, and F? And I recommend that you let the past be the past. And while you're driving, think about other things. Use that time to try to think creatively.
Yep.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ways to do that too.
Yeah.
Angie, I mean, podcasts like this are a perfect way to learn. They're available. There's plenty of books. There's the YouTube side of it. There's really more easily accessible knowledge now than ever. And
I just recommend just being really observant. That's why I asked that question of what could they learn from what you do? Because I think if you can watch somebody else that's really good at what they're doing, it doesn't even have to be in fishing. You can look at somebody else and how they're telling their stories and how they're branding themselves and how they're pushing out the message. And it could be, I don't know, it could be a basketball player, and you can learn from them, watch how they're doing it. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
there's a few things that you just can't replace, and it costs absolutely nothing. Enthusiasm is one of them. That if you're enthusiastic about your trade, your skill, and you let that show through, your emotions kind of come to the surface through social media. People want to hear and see that. They don't want to see people moping around and monotone. So, that's an easy one to me is when I look at new pro staff, is what's their level of enthusiasm and what do they bring to the table as far as that? Because I don't want to be dragging them along. It's easier to kind of hold them back a little bit if I need to in a brand than drag them along with me. So that's an important skill, and that doesn't cost a nickel. So.
It doesn't, and everybody can get better at that. I mean, there's some little tricks you can do to, like I have sat through, and as I'm sure you have, I've sat through, hundreds of weigh-ins, and you're always so happy when someone takes the stage that has a lot of energy, because it changes everything. You've seen guy after guy after guy after guy come through and just go, yeah, I caught him on a worm. And then somebody comes up and is like, hey, how's it going? We had a great day out there. And you're like, woo, you notice that, and it feels so refreshing.
Yeah. Yep. So, and like you said, we watched them, and that's the kind of stuff that if you're lucky enough to be on stage with Dave Mercer, he starts feeding off that, right?
Right.
Then it's boom, boom, just gets bigger and bigger, and he keeps you on stage a little longer because he wants to hear the story. And next thing you know, you got more airtime than the next guy. So.
That's right. That's how it works. So to talk about that a little bit too, when people are up on a stage or in their social media or talking to consumers at a trade show, what would be a good story from a branding point of view? What from a marketer's point of view, what's an ideal story that one of your pros would tell?
Honesty. I talk to my pros all the time. Like, I never want them pitching an item if it's not legitimately something they believe in or use. And, there's a lot of ways that we define what pro staff should be doing. And I need you to, post X amount of times and take so many photos or do whatever. But I emphasize all the time is I need authenticity in what you're doing. So you need to be talking about things that you already know and believe in. And I most certainly think the easiest way for any pro staff to tell the brand story is teach.
Yeah.
These anglers are so full of little tricks and knowledge and tips. And, it can be anything from how you load your boat after a long tournament day and you're tired, but you still have this 5-step process. So I know I do it right. It can be how you store an odd sized bait. It's your ritual for putting on line. It's the way you deal with whatever it might be. Rigging, tying a knot, there's a million ways. And so I think the guys that can weave brand into this storytelling and teaching are the ones that really kind of win the day in the long run.
Agreed. I agree 100%. You know what I don't hear enough about though, Chris, is at the level of don't put your soft plastics in with your crankbaits. You know what I mean? Like the real basic, and maybe it's because the media I consume is too advanced, but I just don't see a lot of the very, very basic understanding of how to do things.
See, now you're singing my kind of song. Internally, I call it, there's front of the boat brands, and then there's back of the boat brands. And Plano has a challenge because we're a back of the boat brand, right? At that moment of truth, when you hook that biggest fish, when you're landing the one that's going to push you over the top, your 5-fish limit, and it's a 5-pounder. Plano boxes are gone. They're underneath the deck lid. They're put away. The trolling motor's right there front and center. The electronics are in the shot. The rod's in your hand. The lure's in the fish's mouth. So, you're right. And so we are constantly looking for better ways to tell our story and make it acceptable. And the only way I know how is through that teaching method. Yeah. And we don't do it enough. No matter how much I do it, I don't think it's going to be enough. But we are embarking on that type of marketing to kind of teach people about the solutions we provide.
Right. So what do you see new guys, aspiring young guys, or they don't have to be young, but aspiring guys under the radar? What do you see them doing right these days?
I think that, one of the things that a lot of the smart young anglers do is it feels like there's a little bit different understanding of what's required, and it's not just fishing. It's this piece of I need to have a pretty strong social media feed. I need a YouTube. I need to be comfortable in front of a camera. Right. Some of these kids are learning that at a very young age. They're 8, 10, 12, and they're already better in front of the camera than I am in some cases. But I think that's what I see many of them doing right. And in some cases, that's why these college anglers kind of leapfrog over some older anglers, because they're they'll talk right to the camera like this and spill their heart and just kind of be all the things we talked about, enthusiastic. What they could do more of is less about themselves and more about the storytelling, I think is one thing. But I think this idea of just being genuine and being willing to reach out to people is a big step in the right direction.
And so obviously my next question was what could they do better? Is that it? Not do more storytelling and less navel gazing?
Yeah. The one thing that still sticks with me, and I said it earlier, I hate to kind of do it twice, but it's that entitlement that they deserve a sponsorship.
Right.
I still get that from anglers every year, like literally in the show floor or on the phone. I get those calls of I've been a brand user my whole life. My dad used it. I buy your stuff. I bought $10,000 worth of your product last year. How can I get sponsored? And it's really,
it's just not the way. It's not the way to lead that conversation.
No, I mean, it's not, because guess what? There's 10,000 more guys just like that. Really.
Right. Now, if someone calls you up and says, Mr. Russell, let me tell you what I can do for you. It would be a different conversation, right?
Yeah. There was a young man that I remember distinctly at a tournament event. He had won out, I think it was a high school tournament that he had qualified for and won. And he came into the booth with his coach. And his coach took the approach of, you should sponsor this man. He just won. He's a big Plano fan. He's going to be something someday. You should sponsor him. And I stopped the coach and I talked to the young kid, and he was, I don't know, 15, maybe 17 at the time. And I said, your coach is doing something for you in your best interest. I said, but one, you need to lead the conversation because it's you.
Yeah.
And two, what happens next year if you don't win? Does that mean I get to drop you immediately? And I'm not here for a very short-term one-way relationship. So what he rethought and came back with, he helped me tear down the booth that week.
I love it.
He came back and said, Mr. Russell, I appreciate it. And what can I do to work? And he had already switched out of his jersey. He was in shorts and a T-shirt, and he helped me pack boxes. And guess what? That kid's on our pro staff team.
Chris, you are not going to believe this, but I had almost this exact conversation with a coaching client last fall where I asked him what he had done for his sponsors, and he had said, one particular sponsor, and he said, they didn't ask me to do anything. And I was like, oh, no, you go down there and help them break down the booth if they need to, you don't wait for them to ask you what they need from you, or tell you what they want you to do. Oh, you are. Yeah, we're definitely on the same page. Okay. But shifting slightly to a bigger picture, what's the fishing industry doing right now?
We've got a bit of a gift handed to us. There's a lot of negatives swirling around our country for a lot of things that I don't think we need to get into.
Yeah, no, let's don't.
But we've got a challenge as an industry, and that's to get more people involved in our sport. But all of a sudden, we've been handed this new recruitment of people, without a lot of vacations going on, with no, youth organized sports this spring. We've seen this huge influx of fishing anglers, first-time anglers or lapsed anglers coming back. And what we need to do is look for ways to teach them and recruit them to stay. We're going to get them once, kind of as a hall pass. But now what are we going to do to keep them? How do we get them to buy a license next year? And I've seen, some companies really reaching out to try to do that, helping target those folks and give them information. Our industry has been spending money on these ideas of Take Me Fishing, where there's a website reference point where they can go and learn anything from ID of species to tie a knot to where to launch your boat or where to fish on the bank. So I think we're doing a good job with that. We need more of it, though. It never ends. We really need to work hard on that. And I think, as marketers, we're obligated to play a role there, whether we have a small brand or a little one, or for a one-man operation, or we employ 10,000 people. It's our obligation to kind of work on bringing more people into our sport.
And we all need to be pulling the same rope in the same direction. Okay, so what not to be critical, but what is the industry? What could the fishing industry be doing better? What are we not doing right?
Um, yeah, it's tough sometimes with some of these things that I don't want to sound critical to
Right.
the work that a lot of people are doing out there,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone is trying to find their own thing. And Angie, I think I talked to you about this a little bit. One of my pet peeves with this same topic, and that's, this recruitment of bringing people in, is I think sometimes we default to free stuff to encourage people to fish. And I think it devalues our sport, actually.
Well, what do you mean? What specifically do you mean?
There's thousands of youth fishing organizations or events that are organized every single year. Mm-hmm. From the local tournament trail does one, to the Lions Club in the hometown, to the Chamber of Commerce does one at the local pond. But it's always, I shouldn't say always, that's too big of a statement. Many times people say, if you come and bring your child, we'll give them a rod and reel. We'll feed them lunch. Mm-hmm. They get free tackle. We will bus them for free. Mm-hmm. And I think it's all meant in the best scope. But there is no such thing as that if your child is participating in soccer, or
that's a good point,
going to a football camp, or baseball, or dance, or any other sport. That I'm a parent. My kids went through that. Hundreds or thousands of dollars were spent on camps and teachings and learnings. But fishing is just the opposite. We almost try to bribe people to come instead of sharing our knowledge, because that's where the power is.
Well, but let me ask you this though. If you go to a couple of years ago, I went to the NCAA Men's Final Four basketball tournament, mm-hmm. and there were all these, a place there to entertain kids and that sort of thing. They were all giving away things. They were giving away little basketballs. They were giving away, hats. So what's the difference there?
To me, the difference is, and I don't say we shouldn't give free things away. At an event where you're encouraging your fans to engage and be more excited about the Final Four event, the Bassmaster weigh-in, that's different.
That's different. Okay.
I'm talking about where a young angler would come to learn the skill of fishing. I want us to invest in the knowledge that they might leave with and teach them how to do the things. And that's the value, even to the point of where it may need to be a small cost to participate in that.
There is nothing like that, I don't think. Youth sports are huge. And as you noted, parents will spend a ton of money on youth sports.
Yeah.
But in fishing, I don't know of any. Well, there might be some fishing camps that you can pay to have your kid go to, but they're not very well promoted, and not very many people know about them. Do you agree?
I do. It's not the norm. It's the outside the norm. And there are a few of those. And, there's some organizations, IGFA is one of my favorites that do a youth. It's called Passports to Fishing. Mm-hmm. And it's very organized, very repeatable. They can do it anywhere in the country. They ship it in, the reason I know, because Plano's involved, and we ship it in our large storage trunks. And when an organizer gets it, there's a whole systematic approach to teaching inside that. And it walks them through step by step how to do it. Now, they don't charge, but they don't give away free either.
Right.
And
to clarify, you're not complaining about giving kids things, because I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression that Chris doesn't want to give a kid a tackle box. Bless their hearts. But what you're saying is it creates a thought that devalues what we're trying to do. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I believe. Yeah. I'm not trying to be Scrooge, right? And take away the candy to the kids. I think there's a place for that, but it can't be the only thing that we lean on to get people to come to a fishing event. Right. People want to learn, and they want to be successful. They want to be an angler for a lot of reasons. One of them is spend time with family. The research has shown they want to be outdoors. They want to engage with adults with their children. They want to have a time away from screen time and video games. But they also want to catch fish. They want to be successful, and they want to be able to repeat that when they get home. Mom and dad don't want to look like they're not smart enough to catch a fish when they're on their own. So I think more emphasis on the teaching, less emphasis on the free is something I'd like to see us do as an industry.
I'm with you on that, brother. I'll help you. Look, I'm sitting here going, that could be a business. We could start summer camps all around the country.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you know a lot of the biggest names in the industry, and
right.
you know, it wouldn't hurt to have some of those guys show up. So.
Yeah, there you go. I'd rather have show up to meet a really good angler that can teach them something than to show up solely to get a free rod and reel.
Yeah. And you know, Angie, I don't want to discredit the work that people are doing because that's the wrong message.
I've given away my share of free fishing stuff over the years to kids. Believe me.
I have too. I'm guilty as charged.
And we'll continue to do that.
I believe there's a better way, is all I'm saying.
I agree. Point well taken. Well made and well taken. All right, we're going to take another break and we'll be back with Chris Russell. Can't wait to continue this conversation. Back soon on the Fishing Business Podcast. Hey, if you're enjoying this podcast, check out fishingbusinessschool.com, where you can see video uploads of the podcast, as well as my blog, where I give you more practical advice on the business side of fishing. fishingbusinessschool.com. Come see me over there. All right, we're back on the Fishing Business Podcast, wrapping things up here in just a minute with Chris Russell from Plano. This is my favorite part of the show because I get to ask you fun questions. Not that the other stuff wasn't fun, but if you could choose a theme song for the rest of your life, what would the theme song be?
You know, I'm a 80s fan back in the day. So, the Bon Jovi song "Have a Nice Day" would probably have to be at the top of my hit list. So.
I love that. Okay, I'm an 80s music girl too. So, okay, what's your favorite movie?
You know, this is a weird one. I'll try not to make it too odd, but Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yes, I love that too.
I mean, I just have loved that movie since I don't even know when I first saw it, but I've got my kids hooked on it. My daughter does some work at a at-risk youth home, and she's now showing it to kids that are 13 now, and they think it's hilarious. And I don't know if they get all the jokes anymore, but I just love that movie. Talk about the ultimate enthusiasm, whether you're not smart enough to know it or not, but that movie's got it in it. So.
That's right. Okay. And your best COVID binge watch on Netflix or TV, what was your favorite binge watch?
No, I still don't do a lot of TV watching. I wouldn't say that I've got a binge watch. My wife and I have got into Yellowstone, the new Kevin Costner series, and that you could there's a pretty badass movie in that. So
well, you know, I was talking to someone about that last night. As a matter of fact, we were talking about Yellowstone. It's just so well written that I think it's one of the best written things on TV right now. And I'm not a huge TV watcher either, and I have to really be convinced to invest my time in watching a TV. But I'll do it for Yellowstone. But I have to tell you, I have not watched this season at all because I'm waiting for it to all be done, and then I can
just watch it all the way
so then I don't have to wait a week to see what happens next to see if Beth gets beat up again. Chris, thank you so much for being with us today. Like I said, I appreciate the time. I know you got a lot on your plate, and it means a lot to me. It really does that you would spend some time with me and my audience. And I know there's a lot of people out there that appreciate it, and will be listening to this for a long time, for years to come. And everything we talked about here is pretty evergreen. So you're a wise man, and you're very smart and creative, and you've got a ton of enthusiasm. And that's one of my favorite things about you.
Well, thank you very much, Angie. It's my pleasure. You know, if you ever feel bored enough to invite me back on a new topic, just let me know.
I will.
But it's fun. I enjoy engaging with you. We don't cross paths quite as much as we used to, but it's always fun, and I love seeing where you're at with your life right now and moving on to some new challenges. So just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Chris. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Appreciate it, Angie. Thanks.
I know I'm the biggest nerd ever, but that conversation just made me so happy, y'all. You know, Chris mentioned in the conversation how much he appreciates enthusiasm. Well, he is the most enthusiastic guy. It's always a pleasure to see Chris face to face because his energy is contagious and he just makes you smile. That's the cherry on top of his secret sauce for success. Okay, here's my 3 takeaways from our conversation with Chris. When everybody zigs, zag. There are so many messages out there trying to get pushed through. And as Chris said, different is better than better. Now, that is a Sally Hogshead quote, and I heard her speak at that same event Chris saw her. And I was so taken by that quote. She also emphasizes that your competitive advantage is not the way in which you're incrementally better than the competition. In order to win business or fans or sponsors or jobs, you have to first get someone's attention. And it's very hard to get anyone's attention when you're so much like the others in your space. All right, number 2, teach. A great way to layer in a brand's message into your story is through teaching. You can teach highly technical things like how you can retune the bill on your shallow diving crankbait, or it can be why you don't want to store soft plastics with those crankbaits. Don't forget the newcomers to the sport. They need to know the basics. And when you teach someone new, you'll probably get a fan for life. Number 3, be enthusiastic. Perfect for Chris. He exemplifies this advice. Didn't you just enjoy listening to him talk? Part of that is because he's smiling and happy and energetic and positive. And all those things are part of enthusiasm. And that's really important. All right. That's going to do it for this week, y'all. Listen, rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching today. That's really important to me. It'll help me keep going and help me keep introducing you to people like Chris. Also, you can reach out to me, the Fishing Business Podcast, on Instagram or Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to sign off now the way the world's greatest fisherman always signed off his show, The Fishing Hole, by saying this is dedicated to Dad because he always had time to take me fishing. See you next time, y'all.